Next up, last talk before the break, is the designer of dApps, the Earl of Accessibility, the nifty burner of wallets himself, Austin Griffith. Thank you.
Am I mic'd up? Can you hear me? Cool, awesome. So sorry if I know Robert has seen this slide about 1 million times. Yeah, I just use the same slide over and over again because I think it's a great analogy for what it feels like to use blockchain. I'm going to do something real quick. Oh, okay, just to liven things up and wake up a little bit. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Austin Griffith, builder in the space. Happy Bowtie Friday. Let's just go to the next slide. All right, there we go. This is what it should be like, right? Onboarding, UX adoption, that's what I'm talking about. I usually start with some kind of misplaced, self-deprecating thing about how I'm not a genius, I'm not working on ETH 2.0, I'm kind of on the front lines trying to figure out how to get apps and stuff into people's hands where they can use them. But we're at this really cool juncture where UX and ETH2 are starting to come together. And the ETH2 guys are starting to talk to me, and they're starting to say, how do we make great UX for ETH2? And I think that's a really exciting time, so we're at an exciting point. So I got into the space down the proverbial rabbit hole. Oh, the icons are different. That's interesting. It's a different icon set. Down the proverbial rabbit hole, started playing with smart contracts, had that goosebumps moment when I realized how freaking awesome Ethereum is and how the technology works. And I have a particular journey that I'd kind of like to talk about because there's some expectations I had and where I was wrong and where I was right and kind of how that worked out. I mean, even key pairs. Technology from 1983, it's gorgeous, right? I love it. So I started by building a decentralized Oracle system because I knew we needed it. I learned a ton about deploying contracts and how things work, but I also learned that I was not smart enough to build something like this. and you had to shill things. So the main takeaway I had from building this was I spent way too much time in the dark. I thought I was going, it was probably like late 2017, early 2018. I thought I was going to build this thing and then just like show up on /r ETH dev and drop it and just get rich, like crazy rich. That didn't happen, not at all. In fact, I took a pretty big pay cut to join Ethereum. So then, after I threw that one away, I started working on this game Gallias, and it's definitely a love project, something I'm still working on, but it's this hand-painted resource management game. All of these things are ERC20s or ERC 721s. There's this neat concept of movement on the blockchain. If you've ever tried to build a dApp that has, or a game that has movement, it's really hard, right? For movement to exist within a smart contract, it's kind of like, you know, like is he at X, Y now, and now where is he, and now where is he? So you kind of have to quit thinking about things in a Web 2.0 way and think about how Web 3 can be used to make really cool games. So one feature of Gallias is sailing on the blockchain. So what you would do is you would put in a transaction to put up your sails. And then basically your ship would travel along based on its speed, which had to do with how well it was crafted, and the craftsman was an ERC 721. And anyways, basically you would put in one transaction and your ship would start to sail every time a block was mined. You would see the ships move along. And so it was kind of like a new way of thinking of things. And another one was the IPFS deployments. So when I built Facebook games, I would make a small change to it and get like death threats from people because they were so pissed off that I changed some mechanic within my game. Well, when you're building a blockchain game, you're deploying a static asset along with smart contracts in a very decentralized and permissionlessly extensible way where you basically fork your game every time you make a major deployment, which ended up being really sweet because if someone didn't like something that I put in here, they could always just go follow the other fork. So neat concepts that kind of emerge from building stuff in Web3. But what I learned from this was, damn, it is hard to do onboarding in Ethereum. You have to have ETH, you have to understand what gas is, you have to download MetaMask, something that there's just no way I'm going to get my mom in here, or my dad. I was talking to an investor, and I used the mom analogy, and she said, or your dad. So my dad, there's no way my dad would get in here and play this. So we need to work on that, right? And also Pogs, put the game of Pogs on the blockchain. Oh, the GIF's not animated. It's a PDF, isn't it? Normally that slammer would come down and the Pogs would spray out. So again, clunky onboarding. Built a game, got super excited about it, released it, and nothing happened. Also, in the dark, I'm kind of still in the dark at this time. I'm still kind of building things all on my own. I haven't really come up for air. So I build my own Clevis, which is basically like Truffle, but for me, it was more focused on rapid application and prototyping quickly. Like I wanted to be able to go to a hackathon and just like bust out the actual app and not have to worry about wrestling with the blockchain. So that was where Clevis and Dapparatus came from. They're sort of, Dapparatus is the front end, Clevis is the back end. You know, compile, deploy, test, orchestrate, and then you inject the contracts into your front end. Your front end lets you, you know, drop in these components like a transaction loader and a MetaMask and a scaler, what else? Gas prices, event loader, everything that you find yourself building all the time, I built into that package. But what I'm getting at is that I spent too much time in the dark building my own tools. And I think that if we want to bring in the next wave of great developers, we kind of almost need to have a really great centralized location where when someone asks the question on Reddit, where do I start? How do I get going on this? There needs to be a really great answer to that and a really compelling set of tools that are just irresistible to use, right? When someone wants to learn about Ethereum, we need to make sure that they have that magic moment early. And you know the magic moment, the rabbit hole. We need to make sure they have that, and then they continue to have that, and they can use tools that they can easily build stuff with. And then on to Nifties versus Nifties, another game I built where it was from Matt Condon, I think. He was the one that kind of got it started. He made a tweet about whether or not we put I in the word nifty or not. And so then I made these Nifties with, some of them have I's and some of them don't, and you could vote. It was like on-chain governance. You could vote one way or the other, and they would be dynamically generated based on the block hash. And all you had to do was spend gas, but no one did. Let's see, where are we? So there we go, yeah. So I think that we need to have more of a focus when we have these hackathons on making it okay to really explore and almost like throw away projects. I think that when I was diving in at first, I was like, I'm going to build something that will make money. I'm going to build the next Uber for dog walking on Ethereum, right? Like, I was after trying to make a company right away, and what I should have been doing was focusing on really neat ways to use the technology. I think a good example of that, Kelvin Fichter, I don't know how to say his name. He built this thing called Mindbreed, and this is like the perfect hackathon project, in my opinion. So he took, can I say the F word? The programming language BrainF is just an awful programming language, but he took CryptoKitty genes and he mapped them to calls within the BrainF language. It's an interpretive language. And then what you would do is you'd bring your cat to him and you would burn your CryptoKitty, and it would execute the code based on the genetics of the cat. Totally useless, but absolutely gorgeous, and a great showing of how this wonderful technology can be used. And almost like, yes, it's a throwaway project, but it's so innovative in a way. So there's that, and like even like Pool Together, the new no-loss lottery that someone came up with. Every once in a while, I just see an idea. It's that weird, like you know it when you see it. And the no-loss lottery is basically everyone pools together a bunch of funds, and then it goes into compound, and interest is made on that, and then there's like a commit reveal randomness roll, and someone wins the money that was made on top of the money that was invested. What's that called? Interest, yes. Sorry. So basically, the interest is paid out to some winner randomly, and everyone gets their money back. So you don't lose any money, you're just investing it. And I think that like, how cool is that? Like what a great idea. And I think that we need to foster that within the ecosystem. We need to quit worrying about building the next thing and find these cool people that are building these cool things and help nurture them and cultivate that, and something great will come out of those things. You'll get that company, you'll get that sweet product, you'll get there, but start with finding the great people and the neat things. Then I realized sort of after Nifties versus Nifties that I needed to provide value within the ecosystem. I wasn't just gonna get stupid rich. I had to really have utility within the ecosystem. So I built this Blocky miner. If you're familiar with Blockies, they're like the little thing that shows your identity within Etherscan. And so what I was wondering is, could you fish? Could you show someone a specific Blocky and make them think it was someone else? And so what I did was I wrote this thing that would go pixel for pixel comparing a Blocky and just basically generate Ethereum accounts as fast as you could. And then along the way, try to find one that would match. And within an hour on a big box, I was able to match his Blocky pretty closely. And so this is kind of like, I started to get traction and people started to like notice a little bit. And I started to get like some Twitter followers, and some of my heroes started reaching out on Twitter. One of them's in the room over there. That's pretty awesome. Maybe two, I don't know. So this kind of like leads to my big break into Ethereum. And my major goosebumps moment, I keep going to magic moments, it's kind of like a theme here. But basically, Alex Van de Zandt put out, I think it was like a UX conference, I'm not even sure where it was, but he puts out this talk about how we can use signed messages in smart contracts. And that just led me down a whole different path of, since my games were so hard for people to use, how can I make that better? And signed messages were the answer to that, meta transactions. So if you're not familiar, I think it went the wrong way. If you're not familiar with meta transactions, it's like you take the data that would normally go into a transaction, and instead of putting it on chain, you just sign it. And then you send it to a relayer, and the relayer puts it on chain for you into a special contract that can basically unravel your signed message and prove that it was you. So it's still cryptographically backed on chain, but you didn't have to pay gas, you didn't have to know what Ethereum was. Basically, you just used a key pair, that technology from 1983 that proves that you signed it and can be generated in a millisecond, right? So someone lands on a page, and you just immediately generate them a key pair, and you start signing things on their behalf and sending them somewhere else and having someone else pay the gas, whether it's the DApp or someone else who's incentivized. But this is like a revelation. All of a sudden, you don't have to have MetaMask. You don't have to have ETH. You don't have to understand all these concepts. You can just click and play the game. And so this sent me down a wonderful rabbit hole of how we can have better UX and it was interesting. So I'm still trying to get into the space, right? Some of my heroes are starting to reach out a little bit. Something's starting to happen. I could tell something. But this proved that like people in the space were ripe for good UX. Like it was finally time. And the speaker before me talked a lot about how when you first got into Augur, it was so hard to use. I think that people were frustrated at this point about how bad the UX was, and knowing that if we wanted to drive mass adoption, we were going to need to have a better first-time experience for people. And so this is like my big break was bringing meta transactions in and learning about them and really evangelizing them, right? So there's this thing I keep saying about it's not good enough to just be open source. So you build something cool, you open source it, okay, fine. You have to go the next step. You have to put on a bow tie and get on a screencast and show the world this thing over and over again, right? You have to make it incredibly easy for them to use, irresistibly easy for them to use, and then that's when you've gone far enough. So at this moment, I got my break. I got hired by Gitcoin to do R&D, so we jammed through all sorts of stuff. We figured out how to pull the nonce out of a meta transaction and make it replayable. So you could sign a single message and it would replay every month. So you could do subscriptions on the chain, commit reveal, counterfactual, Moloch rises, native meta transactions. So then let's back up a little bit. So right before I got hired by Gitcoin, I was out here in San Francisco and I had this really wonderful talk with Alejandro from the Open Money Initiative. And I remember it was a beautiful San Francisco day. There was water, seagulls, burger. I can just imagine it. And he was talking about the Venezuelan government, and he was talking about this light wallet that he wanted to build in Android. And I immediately was saying, well, I've got all the tools to build this in like a web wallet, right? I've got Dapparatus, and I could make a web wallet where we generate them an account and we sign, meta transactions or something like that. And he wanted to go one way, and I wanted to go the other way. But really, we were going to, kind of meet together again in the future. And it was just this wonderful, eye-opening experience of like, wait a minute, like there's actually a need for this, right? Like, if you sit down with me and we have a couple beers, we'll start talking about whether we really need decentralization or not, right? And I think that talk with Alejandro on that pier opened my eyes to where decentralization is needed most. And so, whoops, wrong way. So there we go. So it's emerging markets, right? There are these places in the world that truly need decentralization, and we need to bring it to them, but it can't be this clunky, old Augur experience, right? We need to combine these two things. We need to talk about how we get mainstream adoption as basically great UX. So we need to figure out how to make this great UX, use these signed transactions, use ENS to abstract away the names, all the things that we need to do to make it really easy to use, and we can test it here amongst ourselves. But then that thing is going to get loose in an emerging market. So you've got great UX at the combination of some frontier economy somewhere. Boom. That's where this decentralization stuff is really going to take off, in my opinion. So that leads me to the BurnerWallet. So, excuse me. So using this idea that we needed a web wallet, and then combining the idea of we need really great UX, I put a private key in local storage. I allowed you to just generate one on the fly and then send small amounts of money to it. I put it on a side chain. So there were lots of trade-offs there, right? And I think this is really important when we talk about UX and onboarding is you need to have this talk with yourself about being a maximalist. How decentralized do you need to be for $10? How safe and secure do you need to be for 90 cents? Can we make these trade-offs? I think that before the BurnerWallet, if someone were to say a private key in local storage, everyone would scoff at it. And now only like 60% of the people scoff at it. But it provides that magic moment, going back to the goosebumps. It gives someone the ability to just scan a QR code and instantly have a wallet with money in it. Then they can take that wallet with money in it, scan another QR code, and pay instantly, 5 seconds or something like that. So this is a key here. So people all of a sudden were using this web wallet to send and receive value, crypto, and having these magic moments. And again, the ecosystem was ripe for this. It was something that was weird. There were these circles at DevCon where I could see people sending around money with this funny little wallet that I wrote, like basically on the layover on the way to Prague. And I saw it in their eyes, like there was something magic happening there. And I think that it had been so long since they had that experience of being able to just use crypto really well that I think that it's important that we focus on that. So then we did the cypherpunk speakeasies. I wanted to make sure, so we started thinking we were going to use this thing at ETH Denver. So we had these events where each week for 6 weeks, I just went to a bar in Colorado and I handed out these paper wallets. And I saw how people used it. I watched where their eyes went, where their thumbs went. It was a very like boots on the ground experience. I wanted to be just in the weeds and understand how people were using the product. So then by the time we got to ETH Denver, it would go smoothly. And it went pretty great. I think that about 80% of the people, how many people are at ETH Denver? Anybody here? All right, word. So a few people here. Basically, you got a coin, you scanned the coin, you had a wallet. 5 seconds later, you walked up to the food truck, you scanned a QR code, and you bought your meal. And I think before that, if we tried to make people use crypto to buy things, it was a pretty big pain. And what was it? Maybe 4,400 meals were sold. We off-ramped about $40,000 in DAI to the food trucks, and it cost about 20 cents to run it on XDAI. So it was a pretty good experience. So if you want to run a BurnerWallet event, just Google it, how to host a BurnerWallet event. Of course, you know how loud I am about things, so it's all over online if you're interested. This is the part where we're supposed to talk about the security trade-offs. I think I kind of got into that, but this maximalism, this spectrum of decentralization and security, I think that we need to be smarter about, and we need to navigate a little bit more. And I think I've pretty much covered that, but just to reiterate, like, don't be a maximalist about security. It's probably okay to put a private key in local storage for $5. And in doing that, if you can give someone a magic moment, you've won. Okay, so moving on. I realize that the BurnerWallet is kind of becoming this more modular platform, kind of like this onboarding. So I made basically a Burner modules. It allows any developer to just drop in and create any modules. And then I made an emoji coin exchange just to kind of test out what kind of modules we could make. So this was I'm going to say a shitcoin trading game. You would buy emojis and sell them, and they would fluctuate in value. I wrote the contract in like 15 minutes. You could buy and sell them. So then I went to this classroom in Fort Collins, Colorado, where I live, and they asked me to talk about UX and the stuff that I usually talk about. But then I dropped paper wallets on them, and it was amazing to see the onboarding. Basically, they got a paper wallet, they scanned it in. They had not just a wallet, but they had a game this time on their phone. And they could buy and sell these emojis. And I gave them all $5 on the paper wallet, but I also put about $200 in the contract. And I said, you can play the game and earn more and then off-ramp some. And so what happened was amazing. There was just this spike of onboarding, instant onboarding. 80% of the room was just playing this game. And they played it for 24 hours and drained the contract. They ended up making like 20,000 transactions over that 24 hours, this group of kids here. So so it's not just about buying hot dogs at food trucks. There's all this on-ramping and cool things that we can do. We put a prediction market in it from Helena at Ethereal. I did NFTs. So what I did, I took some of my paintings and I printed them out, and then on the back is a QR code, and you could scan the QR code and just get the collectible. You would just have it. So then you could send it around really easily with this whole BurnerWallet idea. Then we put a Gnosis safe in, which was super cool. Right now it's just kind of a multi-sig wallet, but it gives people the exposure where you have a BurnerWallet, you hit deploy, 5 seconds later you have a Gnosis safe. You can move money in and out of it in 5 seconds, and then you can sign other. So if my phone goes in the toilet and I've signed my laptop, then all of a sudden now I can pull those funds out and I have permanence with my BurnerWallet. And then the DAUG. Okay, so recently, the last few weeks, I've been working on this game called the DAUG. And it is it's a DAO-based game, and it's like this open world. There we go. So it's like this open world. It kind of feels like a 90s browser-based game, right? So basically the way it works is a contract is deployed, and it has a few set game mechanics. In this game, there was a tent that was buildable, and there was a smiley face which represented population. And a tent for every 3 or 4 or 5 blocks would generate 3 pieces of population. And then you could use your population to discover new tiles. So this is all on-chain. It's running on XDAI. It's basically kind of as a side effect, it's massive multiplayer. You bring in your original mechanics, but then this is the Moloch down here. So I also included the Moloch DAO in it. So there's a DAO where all the players who are playing the game can vote in new mechanics. So basically we started with just a tent that generated population, but then someone voted in, they put a proposal up for the rest of the players. Hey, how about we have a house that you can upgrade your tent from, and then that thing will generate maybe 10 population per 5 blocks. So then, eventually, everyone buys in. They start with the initial conditions. They play the game. They vote in new conditions. And then eventually, they get to some victory condition, and then they're paid out. And one neat little thing is, on the payout, when the guy claims his funds, A small cut goes to the developer that wrote the smart contracts that were backing each one of those. So the tent is a small smart contract, and it has a small little cut that goes to the developer. So the developers are sort of incentivized to build cool parts and mechanics of the game. So thank you for having me. I'm Austin Griffith. Hit me up anytime if you're a new developer in the space, if you're having troubles, if you're stuck on a project. I'm always around. So hit me up anytime. Thank you.
So up next, we have our first break. So we're going to have a 30-minute break, reconvene here at 11. We also have this slide up with some of the workshops we're going to have going on. There's workshops, technical talks, meeting rooms in there, community room, technical talks. So just check out everything. You have 30 minutes, and we're going to reconvene here for the next speaker. Thanks, guys.